5 o'clock, having arrived, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Vallecitos Water District for August 16, 2023. And notice to the public, before we begin, I would like to announce that members of the public may watch the meeting live via camera or smartphone by going to the district's website and clicking on Watch Live icon. However, they will not be able to participate in the meeting remotely. Members of the public may also listen to the meeting live on their phone by dialing 888-788-0099 toll-free or 877-853-5242 toll-free also. When prompt, enter the meeting ID and passcode displayed on the district's website. And I think I would like to lead the pledge. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Please indicate your attendance. Very good. We're all here. Do we have any additions to the agenda?
We do not.
Very good. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes, adopt the agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Very good. Please vote. Very good. Pass unanimously. Public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Very good. Consent calendar. Does anybody have an item they'd like to pull from the consent calendar? Seeing none, entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Move to approve.
Second.
Please vote. Action item 2.2, construction contract award of the Montiel Lift Station and Force Main Replacement Project, Montiel Lift Station Replacement.
Actually, it's the Meadowlark fail-safe rehabilitation. This is item 2.1, right?
2.1. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped it. That would be action item 2.1, construction contract award of the Meadowlark fail-safe rehabilitation Buena Reach project.
All right, I'll jump in real quick and then hand it over. So our asset management program and some recent wastewater spill history have highlighted a problem we have on a main piece of infrastructure. So Ryan Morgan is going to explain the problem and discuss with the board the proposed solution. So Ryan, take it away.
Thank you, General Manager Prum, and good evening, directors of the board. It's my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm very excited to present the first two action items tonight, actually. Two very large milestone projects for capital. Just to remind the board, what is the project? Looking at the figure between the intersections, between the streets of Yarrow Drive and College Boulevard, the project is to renew the district's existing fail-safe outfall throughout this reach, which is approximately 10,000 feet of 16-inch diameter ductile iron pipe within the city of Carlsbad. Either by CIP rehabilitation, which is represented by the greenish, yellowish line work, or by complete new 16-inch diameter pipeline replacement, which is represented by the red line work in the figure. Why is this project needed? All treatment plants are required to have either a fail-safe outfall or a large emergency storage by state. The existing district fail-safe outfall meets the state requirements for secondary or recycled water from Meadowlark to be discharged into the Encina Ocean outfall at any time. This typically occurs during heavy rain events or if the treatment process was to be upset somehow at Meadowlark. The fail-safe has exceeded its useful life and has become a liability for the district to operate. 3 recent fail-safe outfall breaks have occurred in December 2018, and 2 breaks occurred in April of 2020, and those are denoted by the little deltas shown on the figure. The break locations in the DIP were observed with presence of significant corrosion. Staff observed also groundwater leaking into the failsafe from upstream during each repair. This indicated that additional break locations are likely on the failsafe due to the corroded ductile iron pipe. Outside contractors were required to repair these breaks due to the depth of the outfall and the complexity of the scope of work for the repair. Just to give the directors an idea, the ductile iron pipe shown on your screen before you was removed during the repair, the emergency repairs, and you can see the corrosion evident by these pictures. I'm just going to go back to the figure. Project history, the board has seen this project several times in the past. They've authorized a task order to NV5 in October of 2020 for $144,000 for planning and engineering design services. 2 amendments were also authorized in September 2022 and February 2023. The board authorized a PSA to Riley CM in February of this year for $464,879 for construction management and inspection services. Additional environmental work was also performed by Recon Environmental to assist in biological and noise assessments throughout the alignment. Staff completed final design and advertised the project bid package on June 9th of this year. The engineer's estimate was valued at $5.75 million. Staff received an open bids on July 20th from 4 contractors as listed on page 83 of your board packet. J.R. Felance Construction Company, or Felance, was the apparent low bidder at $6,653,600. A protest letter was received from SRK Construction, who was a second place low bid on July 27th, claiming that Felance cured in place pipe lining subcontractor does not have the necessary experience requirements, and the Felance failed to list the CIPP manufactured as outlined in the bid documents. And lastly, Felance did not list a subcontractor for the alternative bid item for C900 PVC fusible pipe scope of work. Staff and council reviewed the letter and recommend rejecting the protest as without merit for the reasons listed on page 84 of your board packet. Staff and council completed the evaluation and determined that Felance was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Staff requested a proposal from NV5 for amendment number 3 for engineering services during construction totaling $25,000. Riley CM will perform this construction management and inspection services for this project, including geotechnical engineering services. And staff will provide project management services and inspection oversight services throughout construction. The project is tentatively expected to begin construction in September and be completed within approximately 9 months. The project's budget of $5.12 million is identified in the fiscal year 23-24 district budget. As a 50% stakeholder, Buena Sanitation District will fund 50% of this project's planning, design, and construction effort. The total project's fiscal impact is itemized on page 85 of the board packet at just under $8 million. The project is over budget by approximately $2.87 million. Several factors, including market inflation, labor shortages, and significant risk which this project produces, all factors into the higher than expected cost. Specific risk factors include environmental and schedule constraints within the contract, traffic impacts in the city of Carlsbad, and project budget planning is outdated, which didn't properly capture recent changes in the engineer's estimate and recent cost escalations associated with construction labor and materials. This had to do directly with the time of budget planning ending and the time when we went out to bid, which didn't overlap, unfortunately. Funds, however, are available in the sewer replacement reserve to cover the additional $2.87 million. Buena Sanitation District will reimburse the district approximately $4 million upon completion. This requires the district to budget 100% of the project. Therefore, the budget increase is necessary to proceed. It's with this, the staff recommends for the Meadowlark Failsafe Rehabilitation Buena Reach Project are, number 1, reject the protest letter from SRK Engineering as without merit, increase the project budget by $2,870,956 to a total of $7,990,956. Third, authorize the general manager to execute amendment number 3 with NV5 in the amount of $25,000 for bid and construction phase engineering services. And lastly, authorize the general manager to execute a construction agreement with Felance in the amount of $6,653,600, subject to the provisions of the contract. And it's with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
First, do we have any public speakers? Do we have any questions from the board? Yes.
So this is a big project, so I have a couple of questions. And thank you for reminding us about this project and going over it thoroughly. So, we've seen a lot of failures in ductile iron pipe, and it's cost our district a lot of money. I'm wondering, sort of globally, if this is happening elsewhere, and if there is opportunity for some kind of class action lawsuit where multiple districts band together, because I imagine it's not just happening here, where the ductile iron pipes are failing at rates that were not anticipated, or they are not lasting as long as they were proposed to last. It's costing our customers a lot of money. So has anyone ever talked about a class action lawsuit of any kind against the manufacturers?
I would ask Nick to address that aspect.
I'm not aware of anything, but it is something that we could talk to staff about on what the provisions of the contracts were that were entered into, in which those were installed, what the warranties were, when those were installed, what the imagined life was, and whether there's any potential for a claim or research to see if there are existing lawsuits from other agencies that we could join or band together on.
That would be great. I think it's worth looking into because we're having to replace a lot of them, and my understanding is that we're replacing them sooner than we anticipated that we would have to. Secondly, that picture of the pipes is really compelling with the holes in it, and that's the kind of thing that when we ask our customers to pay for infrastructure, it kind of is in a black hole, but when they see things like this, it's important, and they get a better understanding and a visceral understanding of why it's important to replace our infrastructure, and ergo why we have to raise rates every now and then. So I would like to see these pictures in some kind of communication, maybe working with the P3 committee, working with Chris and his group, maybe between the pipes, but some kind of push out of pictures like this. I think it's really important. Thirdly, we don't get a lot of protest letters. So can you explain, for my benefit and the benefit of the public, why something like that would happen?
Bid protests are not uncommon. They do happen, and especially in larger capital projects. The good news is about this project, we received good bids. The fact that we're over budget is, aside from that fact, we received 2 very competitive low bids, and we feel that the risk elements that I mentioned earlier factored into some of those escalations, which was represented across the board in all 4 of the bidders. Bid protests, I could probably turn it over to BB&K here in a minute as well, but in my experience, they do happen, and oftentimes it's not necessarily with or without merit. We take every bid protest we receive very seriously, and we perform due diligence to work with legal and make sure that everything is in compliance with the contract documents, and that we didn't somehow step out of line or make a mistake that would give that protest merit.
Okay.
So if that was the case, we would probably have a different judgment on that. But Nick, do you want to mention anything?
Well, I'll just jump in as a former contractor. Why we get these letters is, you've got a contractor that's put a lot of effort, time and effort putting their bid together, and if they're so close, I think less than 300,000, they're going to look for any little, any deviation, any technicality to try to basically get the job, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to get that job. Ryan's right. We do get them. We've had them in the past here at the district, and other agencies get them as well. They're not too common, but with a job of this size, and that's why you're seeing it. It's a job of this size, and the bids are so close, they're going to try to make an effort.
Yeah,
And
And-
And thankfully, working with BB&K, we've got very strong argument to reject it without merit, so.
Okay.
And generally, the test is whether, depending on what issue the second bidder typically has identified, it's whether the deviation is something material. If it's not something material, that the district can waive it without risk. And working with staff here, that's what we determined. Everything was either material or not a deviation that was identified. So it's something that we and staff felt comfortable that the district could move forward on with rejecting the protest letter.
Okay, thank you for that due diligence and for that explanation. And finally, the reimbursement that we are expecting to get from Buena, when will that come through?
We are gonna invoice Buena Sanitation for the design services, planning and design services that we've incurred to date. Since we are now past bid phase, we will try to get all those costs back in reimbursement. And then at the end of construction, well, we could do it monthly as well. Jason, you?
Well, with, monthly invoices, we could, I think maybe we can talk to Buena and see what would work best for them as far as what they budgeted. But generally, we kind of do it at the conclusion of the project, because all the costs are kind of captured, whatever credits, whatever additions and changes to the scope have occurred through the life of the project. I think we have 9 months on this, and then we kind of capture that all at the end and bill them all at the end. I think that's probably what they would prefer. There's not really a cash flow issue, so, but that's certainly, we can talk to them about that.
Okay, thank you.
And Director Boyd Hodgson, if I can add on your point about public outreach, we'll certainly work with Chris and the policy committee to talk about it, but I've already had conversations with Chris about using a portion of the lobby to provide exhibits for things like this. So we could put it out in the lobby to show an example of what a ductile iron pipe failure looks like, so people understand where part of their bill is going to. I think it would be very dramatic. The pictures are dramatic. Seeing a physical demonstration in the lobby is even more dramatic.
Yeah.
So we'll be working on that. We're just trying to figure out how much of the lobby we can carve out towards exhibits like that.
Yeah,
We have the Jeep
100%.
taking up a big chunk, but we still have a pretty big lobby to do things like
Sure.
this.
Thank you.
I have a question. When was this pipe put in?
1982?
Yeah, 1982.
82,
So,
yeah,
you know,
82.
virtually 40 years of life.
Correct.
So I'm sure, being a former contractor myself, the warranty item is way past, and so.
Well, this
probably
is
not
also
gonna
a
get any
very,
traction there.
this is also a very wet environment.
Yeah.
So it was basically put in a creek.
Yeah.
Right, that was then built up over time for development, but it's, so highly corrosive.
Very good.
Yeah, along those same lines, was it installed with a polyethylene bag at that time? Probably wouldn't have made a difference as wet as the conditions were.
Yeah,
I don't believe it was there as during the repair. I don't believe
Just
there was
curious,
a bag,
because
yeah.
it's pretty standard practice now.
Exactly, correct.
And as you know, a lot of the ductile iron failures that we get that do have the poly bag, it's because it's been torn or
Right,
ripped.
it's been compromised.
Yeah, and so it's a good protection, but if it's compromised in any of the slightest, then you're subject to that
Yeah.
corrosive environment.
Yes,
Well, just to follow up to that, our relationship with Buena Vista Sanitation, it just seems, and I don't know, from an outsider, we're doing all the work, we're putting up the bids, we're construction, and we just send them a nice little invoice at the end. Do we invoice, I mean, staff time? It just seems like, is that the way that relationship works between us and Buena Vista?
It's by agreement. It's a legacy agreement for the fail-safe outfall, and we're the shepherds of the outfall, so
Okay.
it's on our responsibility to maintain and perform capital projects when it's necessary.
And then we do bill them for staff time and everything else, and a nice little package with a bow on it and everything?
50%,
Okay,
Correct.
50 across the board?
correct.
Okay.
For
And
this
are they
reach-
responsible for 50%? I mean, is it 50/50?
Well, for this reach of pipe, Buena has a 50% cost share responsibility. There's two other sections of the pipe where the cost share responsibility is different.
Okay.
The upstream reach, we have 100%. This reach is 50/50 between us
50/50.
and Buena. And the downstream also brings in the city of Carlsbad, and it changes the cost share percentage.
Okay, and that cost share is including, I mean, we factor in
Everything.
staff time and everything else.
Yeah, staff time, consultants, construction management, inspection, the construction contract itself, it's all tracked.
And we can just approve it here tonight, and they just have to agree to the bill when they get it at the end? I mean, do they have any say in like, hey, wait a minute, that we didn't agree to that?
Well, we've had long discussions with them all along, We've had,
Okay.
so this isn't,
So
yeah,
there's
we're
no
not,
surprises on their signs, like,
There's
wait,
no
wait a minute,
surprises.
you're
We've been
2.3 over
working-
budget, we didn't agree
we've been
to
working
that.
with them for the length of this project. Ryan's been
Okay,
in
okay.
contact
I
with
just
them,
want, I didn't
so-
want to prove something that goes 2 million over budget, and all of a sudden they say, wait a minute. So that's communicated throughout. Thank you.
Any further, yes, Eric?
Two things. What was the alternative of this, again, you mentioned at the start? Just building a tank, right? Something like that?
On-site storage in Meadowlark.
Yeah.
I believe it's a lengthy amount of storage. It's a significant amount in the range of, I believe, 120 days of storage. And which Meadowlark is a small site built out.
Not even with the new open, okay, forget that.
So,
I always worry they're just going through the thought exercise of alternatives. Anyways, 40% over budget, seems excessive, even though, you know, the reasons, I get it. Should we in the public have concern for a similar 40% over budget for future projects? Like, did we miss this on everything? Did we undercut by such a large amount on everything?
No, I don't think so. I think this project is a little rare in the sense it's over budget as it is. We typically, as you'll see on the next item, get it much closer. So we felt that multiple factors factored into this. As I mentioned, the risk element. There was the end of budgeting season, budget planning season ended kind of before we could get the updated engineer's estimate from our consultant, and that had increased significantly between that time frame. So using the old values, using the old numbers, we did what we do basically on every project and how we assemble our budgets and planning, which includes essentially all the items that are broken down on the fiscal impact. All those items go into our budget planning. But there were elements that were essentially off or missing from that equation in the planning phase, which, unfortunately, we were off by a significant amount on this. So we don't feel it's any way standard for us or representative of the future of CIP here at the district. And I guess the good thing is we have a 50% cost-sharing partner in this project, which we can't really say on most other projects, so.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think we have a pretty good track record. Certainly, this project isn't reflective of that, but if you look at the whole globally, I think the district has a pretty good track record of really getting those budgets in. But yes, occasionally, we are subject to the market increases that we don't catch, and because of the timings of the budget, like Ryan said, we're making the best decisions with the information we have at that time, and we try to be conservative, but not too conservative, so it is a balance, but in general, I think we're pretty good on this.
So this is an outlier.
I would say so, yes.
And then the two consultants coming within 300,000, is that a red flag at all?
Having the two contractors be so close?
Yeah.
No, that's a good thing.
Well, that's good.
That you want a good tight cluster, that means they were looking at the same thing, they were looking at the risks very similarly, so that's good.
Perfect, thank you.
I would add, I would add about the cost increase, obviously COVID, that during and post-COVID, we saw huge increases. And some of these legacy projects where they were budgeted before or right at the beginning of COVID didn't anticipate everything. And then when we finally get around to awarding a construction contract, then we start to see, oops. So it's a legacy project. I think as we start to move forward with the newer projects in the post-COVID environment, we'll be a lot closer on the construction estimates.
I got one other thing to add. SRK Engineering, their protest letter, I hear them, I hear your reasons for it. It would have been nice to have them here at the meeting to make their own case, so perhaps if they're listening or future contractors are listening, if you're going to send in a protest letter, you could also accompany here at the meetings so we can hear you in person.
We agree. We'd love to have them present as well.
We did send them a letter explaining our thought process, and I think we notified them of the date and time of the award, so they were fully notified.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve Staff's recommendation, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to thank staff for bringing this critical project forward for construction, and I would happily make the staff's recommendation.
And a second?
Second.
Very good, please vote. And it's unanimous, very fine. Item number 2.2 now, construction contract award of the Montiel Lift Station and Force Main Replacement Project. Montiel Lift Station Replacement.
Yeah, so the district has a wastewater lift station that serves a small sewer shed on the eastern portion of our service area, and it's well past its useful life, and it's time to take action. And your favorite senior project engineer, Ryan Morgan, is going to talk about this project as well.
It's the Ryan Show today.
Part two today. Again, very excited to bring this milestone project. It's been years in the making. Board has seen this many times, but just a reminder, what is the project? Project is the replacement of the district's Montiel lift station that serves the far eastern limits of the district on the border of city of Escondido. The facility was installed in 1985 and intended to be a temporary facility at that time. The project includes the demolition and full replacement of the existing pump station. This also includes a section of new force main from the pump station to Montiel Road. Why is this project needed? The existing facility has exceeded its useful life and needs replacement. Also, the lift station cannot accommodate sewer flows during rain events and requires around-the-clock assistance from operations to ensure no sewer is spilled into the environment. The new lift station is designed to current standards with backup power, drastically reducing the risk of a sewer spill to the district. Project history, the board authorized Michael Baker International in November 2019 for engineering, design, and environmental services with a total fee of $500,000. Their scope was for the design of both the lift station and the sewer pipeline improvements. The single CIP was separated into two CIP projects during the current fiscal year. The lift station and the sewer, into the lift station and the gravity sewer and force main improvements project. This was done to attract competitive bids because the district only received one bid when the projects were combined, and we went out to bid earlier this year in January. 4 total amendments were authorized to Michael Baker, totaling $245,000. This included extra scope to split the projects, survey support for easement acquisitions, and construction support of the pipeline project. The Montiel Force Main and Gravity Sewer project was already awarded by the board on June 21st. Staff received and opened bids on August 3rd from 5 general contractors as listed on page 89 of your board packet. Kiewit Infrastructure West Company, or Kiewit, was the apparent low bidder at $6.69 million. Staff requested a proposal from Michael Baker for amendment number 5 for engineering services during construction for the lift station replacement project totaling $50,000. Valley CM was selected to perform the construction management, inspections, and geotechnical services on this project. Staff will provide project management and inspection oversight services throughout construction. The project is tentatively expected to begin construction in the winter of 2024 and be completed within approximately 18 months. The project's budget of $8.7 million is identified in the fiscal year 23-24 district budget. The total project's fiscal impact is itemized on page 89. And at just over $8.53 million, the project is estimated to be under budget by approximately $165,000. By rebidding the projects as 2 separate bid packages in a competitive bid environment, the district is realizing a savings of approximately $164,000 compared to the original rejected bid. Staff recommendations for the Montiel Lift Station Replacement Project are to authorize the general manager to execute a construction agreement with Kiewit in the amount of $6,692,595, subject to the provisions of the contract. Authorize the general manager to enter a PSA with Valley CM in the amount of $588,635 for construction management, inspections, and geotechnical engineering services during construction. And lastly, authorize the general manager to execute Amendment 5 under the current PSA with Michael Baker in the amount of $50,000 for bid and construction phase engineering services. And if there are any questions, I can take those at this time.
Yes.
So, first of all, thank you again for reminding us and bringing this to our attention again. if it's not expected to start construction until the winter of 2024, and we're providing estimates and we're trying to figure out how much it's going to cost now, is it possible that we're going to run into a similar issue where we think it's going to cost one thing because we priced it out in 2023, but then when we actually have to purchase the materials and construct it, it's actually more expensive than that, and we're over budget. So just explain to me if that's an issue, and if it's not, then explain to me why. Thank you.
It's not an issue. It's under contract currently, under their competitive bid, under their low bid price and what they have presented on their bid schedule. And those prices are essentially locked in unless there's some sort of change condition that justifies a different cost. But time in this regard is not a change condition on the contract. The reason there is a delay and a lag between awarding this and construction start is really due to the market as far as new electrical and instrumentation equipment and panels. There's a long lead time associated with once there's a submittal approved and the contractor can order those parts, those materials. We're looking at roughly a year of lead time until they get delivered. So in order to cut down the construction window, we don't want to start right away because we'll just start but not be able to finish when we want to finish. So that's why there's that gap.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
My only question is, I mean, we're spending lots of money. Is there any other large projects on the horizon that we need to be concerned about? It's not, I know, it's not related to this one, but
Well,
yeah, I hate to say this, Randy, remind my wife, she's just spending money like crazy. But I'm
This is
worried
all
about-
part of the plan.
I'm worried about Christmas in 2025. Are we gonna have funds? I mean, is there anything big on the horizon that we need to be looking forward?
Yeah, we do have another large project, the Tres Amigos water line, which is budgeted, which should hit later in the fiscal year. But these are all big projects that we've been planning for several years. In fact, that's why we took out debt financing for these projects. So this is all hitting sort of according to plan, if
Okay.
you will, and the costs are all anticipated.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to call you name.
No offense taken, by the way. I'm doing my job.
You're doing a great job at it.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, just an observation. It's a great group of qualified contractors that bid.
Yes.
I've had experience with several of them. So I think your strategy of splitting up the project worked really well.
It did, and we were able to capture bids in a competitive environment, and we received good bids. So,
Very good. No further questions? Entertain a motion to approve item 2.2 as presented.
Move to approve as presented.
And a second? I'll second it. Very good. Please vote. And it passes unanimously. 2.3, award of professional service agreement for the fleet electrification plan.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. So the board is aware that the state has adopted new regulations by the California Air Resources Board that's going to require a transition from standard internal combustion engines to a zero-emission vehicles, right? So that requirement won't only affect the types of vehicles that we have to purchase, but it'll affect the types of infrastructure that we have to build here in order to power those. So Eric Bennett he's our asset management supervisor. He's going to tell you what we're going to be doing about that in regard to those new regulations and a study that we're proposing. So Eric, whenever you're ready.
All right, good evening, directors. I'm here to discuss the Advanced Clean Fleets regulation passed by the state of California and how the district intends to begin planning our compliance with it. We'll begin with a brief overview of the regulation and then discuss the consultant and scope of services, and we'll finish with the project's budget and how this plan fits into it. The Advanced Clean Fleets regulation is designed to phase out the sales of medium-duty and heavy-duty trucks or internal combustion vehicles with gross vehicle weight ratings greater than 8,500 pounds. So that's about 37% of our fleet. Another goal of the regulation is to accelerate the market for the availability of zero-emission vehicles. So as part of the regulation, agencies must submit a compliance report by April 1st, 2024, and beginning in January 2024, so next year, fleet owners will be required to adopt an increasing percentage of zero-emission vehicles. So state and local government fleets, including special districts, are required to ensure that 50% of all fleet purchases of medium-duty and heavy-duty vehicles are zero-emission. And beginning in 2027, 100%. That increases to 100% of our medium-duty and heavy-duty vehicle purchases. As an alternative plan for fleet electrification, managers may choose CARB's approved milestone option. This basically gives fleet managers the choice to phase in zero emission vehicles by target dates specified by the Air Resources Board. Then the target dates can be found on the table noted on page 92 of the board agenda, which would be right here. To meet the timelines laid out in this regulation, the district needs to hire an outside energy consultant to assist with gathering the required reporting information, evaluating future zero-emission vehicle options, and developing a plan to move forward. The district decided to expedite this portion of the project by sole sourcing this proposal from Terra Verde Energy. Terra Verde Energy has worked with the district on previous energy projects, and is currently providing solar asset management services for the district. With their industry knowledge, history of the district, and already having in-depth knowledge of our energy profile, this leading to less of a data dump, and also utilizing the recent student report on our fleet, we believe they are best positioned to complete this analysis expeditiously and at a favorable cost. After a few meetings and discussions among staff and Terra Verde, we were able to finalize the scope for this project, which includes developing a plan for fleet electrification, evaluating infrastructure needs, both internal and external. So that means what our needs are going to be with the new charging, and if SDG&E is able to provide it to us. And then also they will help prepare required reporting documents. And even though the regulation only requires us to look at the 37% of our vehicles called out, as part of this plan, we will be evaluating electrification of our entire vehicle fleet. If the board wishes to review the itemized scope, it can be found on page 93 of the board agenda, which would be right here. This project is identified in the fiscal year 23-24 budget with a total project budget of $320,000, with funding coming 51% from water replacement funds and 49% from sewer replacement funds, and consultant fees totaling $60,000 and estimated staff labor and overhead totaling $56,000. We estimate the subtotal for this portion of the project to be $116,000, leaving $204,000 in the budget. So as with this, staff recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the General Manager to execute a professional services agreement with Terra Verde Energy in the amount of $60,000 for the fleet electrification plan project.
And if I can add real quick, so one of the hopeful outcomes of this study is that they'll identify our infrastructure needs to support electric vehicles and put a cost to that. The Helix Water District, they're a little bit bigger than us, a little bit bigger fleet. They're a little ahead of us on this effort, and they're estimating that their infrastructure costs alone are going to be in the $10 to $12 million range. That's just to run the infrastructure to support the more expensive vehicles you have to buy. So don't be shocked when this study comes out and starts identifying really big numbers on the infrastructure needs that will be required to support this initiative.
I have a question. This was one of the big discussions at CASA this past conference, and it came up, some of these vehicles are not even available. And so how do we rectify the requirement if there is no vehicle available, is the first question. And the second question, we do the study, and can we implement that infrastructure in a phased portion so, you know, we don't have a $12 million bump to get all this done, and we have years before we have to convert to electrical vehicles when they are available.
So you're raising a lot of issues that the industry is raising with CARB, to say, hey,
Yeah.
these vehicles aren't available, we can't meet the timelines because we can't get SDG&E to deliver the infrastructure that we need. CARB does have some exemptions. It says you are exempt under the following circumstances. There's currently an assembly bill underway to help clarify those exemptions in a way that's favorable to the organizations, to the agencies. So there's some hope there, but CARB is moving forward. They don't want this to get slowed down, but there is some rationale or reasonableness in there that if you can get to a point, January of '24 rolls around and you have to purchase some alternative vehicles and they're not available, there is an exemption you can take advantage of.
And do we have to purchase the vehicle if it's available, and we have no need, and we have to replace a vehicle just because of the timeline?
Yeah, excellent point. No. So if you have a vehicle that's operating, you're under no obligation to get rid of a vehicle just to buy a new alternative fuel vehicle. But when you buy a new vehicle, it has to comply with the new regulations.
all right.
So we've been buying a lot of vehicles, not just to beat the deadline, but because they were due to be replaced. So we're hopeful that a lot of our fleet, at least at the beginning stage of the implementation, won't be affected. We can run them to, not to failure, but till the end of their useful life. And then at that point in time, hopefully we'll have the infrastructure in place necessary to support the electrification for them.
And we'll phase that infrastructure so we don't need 20 electric pumps?
Yeah, so there's some infrastructure you can phase. For example, the charging station, the post itself, you can build them as needed. But the main pipeline of electricity that comes through, you may want to do that all at once. You're not going to want to continuously dig up streets and
Yeah.
run new power lines, right? So that's an example. And I'm sure the Terra Verde study will help us identify phasing, ultimate infrastructure, and phasing approaches to get to that ultimate infrastructure.
Very good, okay. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, I was just curious who at Terra Verde is the project manager for this?
Currently, well, we've been working with their Vice President, Phil Villagomez, on this project so far. Since it hasn't been approved, we haven't been assigned a project manager. But in my experience, everybody working at that company has been really responsive and really helpful on all the projects they've
I
worked on.
agree.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes?
Thank you. I'm glad we're starting to talk about this. It's a lot of money to issue, to cover a study, but I think that if we can be assured that the study will help us understand the most efficient way to implement this in a phased manner, and it sounds like, some of the objections are, well, the vehicles aren't available. But it sounds to me like we're not bound by that if they're not available. It's a sort of a gradual ease into electrification of the fleet, which makes sense. That's common sense. And I'm glad we are going to be doing it. And I certainly hope that we have not been buying up vehicles to meet, to get ahead of the deadline. So I'm supportive of this. If you are convinced that this is the way we need to go and it will help us streamline this process and make it the most efficient way to move us in a direction that is environmentally friendly.
We are.
Okay.
If I can add, the board may remember that we partnered with the Senior Experience Project from Cal State San Marcos that did
Yes.
some preliminary work, and it was pretty good work that they did. We're going to make all that information available to Terra Verde and hopefully help their process along
Good.
the way.
Perfect. Any other questions?
Just so it's noted, we have regulations, and we need to comply with those regulations, and we're just paying somebody to let us know the best way to comply with those regulations. Is that some, excuse my ignorance, but it seems like we already know the regulations, we already kind of know what we need to do to comply.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. Had the regulations not been promulgated, the district may have chosen a different or slower approach towards electrification.
Well, and regulations always change. I know this,
They do.
a year down the road, politics, things are gonna change. So
Yeah.
that's why I don't know, it just seems very elementary. The regulations are already out there. We know what we need to do to comply. We gotta buy so many
Yeah.
vehicles, we have this, percentage of the fleet. What else is there? Besides, I know the infrastructure and all that, but it seems like you need so many pumps to, charge so many vehicles.
Yeah.
To me, it seems like we could do that without paying somebody $60K to do it. I have my own opinions, but am I missing something?
I don't think we have the internal expertise that Terra Verde brings to the table to do a comprehensive study.
Just to comply with the regulations? as far as buying vehicles and charging those vehicles?
basically
Is there
they're
more
develop-
than it, than just buying and charging?
Yeah, so they're developing basically a master plan for us to electrify our fleet. That's what they're doing, so that's what they bring to the table.
Yeah, they've just got extensive experience doing this with other agencies, so they can just kind of help us lay out where this needs to be, what the infrastructure is, certainly internal. We're gonna need to support the fleet, and then they're also gonna help us with incentive and funding, and just doing that extra legwork of digging in and helping us out.
All right.
Yeah, so one of my concerns with this is the moving target, right? So
Yeah.
a decade ago, a lot of trash companies and delivery firms, they went to like compressed natural gas and other alternative vehicles. They made a huge infrastructure investment. Now they're gonna have to redo it and invest in something else. So there's always that concern that we may spend $10 million to build infrastructure, and then it's gonna be neutron-powered cars after that, right?
Thank you for
But we have to
bringing that
comply
up.
with the regulations that are in front of us at the time. So, and the deadlines are pretty aggressive.
But I think it's probably safe to say that whatever technology is brought up in the future, it's not going to be more pollutive than gas. So we're moving towards
Yes.
a direction of reducing pollution in our environment. And now it's electricity, it may be something else later, but it's not, it's always moving forward in a way that is better for our planet. It's never taking us backwards. It's just a pain if it happens to cost us more money. So we do have to be mindful of that, but.
That's the
Big picture.
spirit, right, that's the spirit behind the
Yeah.
regulations.
Yes.
Right.
Very good. With that, entertain a motion to approve item 2.3 as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Please vote. The vote passes. Let's see, item 2.4, Association of California Water Agencies Committee Appointments, nominations for 24-25.
Okay, I'll take that one, President Hernandez. So Aqua has 13 committees, and what they're doing is looking to see who wants to be on the committees for 2024 and 2025. So this is kind of an open call for expressions of interest. So any director who's maybe interested in serving on a committee, if you let me know, I can put you on a form, and then we can submit it to Aqua for their consideration. Now, having said that, if you submit expression of interest, doesn't mean you'll be selected. That is up to the Aqua president. But what I can say is if you don't express interest, you won't be placed on, right? So I'll ask for a couple of things from the board. If you're interested, let me know, and then also delegate the president, President Hernandez, to sign off on that, because we do have to submit a form with our expressions of interest by director, and it has to be signed by the president, and he needs authority to do that. There's information on the board packet. I think it's on page 101. So if you're interested in what those committees are, I think the only current director who serves on Aqua committees is Director Boyd Hodgson, and I know she's on 2 of the committees, groundwater and energy.
Yes, yes.
I think it's those 2. And I think those will just term out. If Director Boyd Hodgson doesn't express interest to be placed on it again, you will be removed from it. So if you want to stay, let me know. You can either do that today, or you can let me know via email, and then I'll coordinate with President Hernandez, and we'll submit the forms by the deadline.
Very good. Moving on. Item 2.5, Association of California Water Agencies, Region 10 Board of Election.
Yeah, so Aqua Region 10, they're up for board elections. The nominating committee for Aqua has identified a slate of candidates. So our board can choose not to vote at all. We can vote on the slate of candidates, yes or no, on the slate that they put forward, or we can select from other people who've expressed interest. So that's really basically up to the board. There's information in the board packet as to who's on each of those, and I apologize, this is the item that's on page 101. The other item is probably on page 96 or so. So if the board wants to express interest, I need direction to say, do we want to vote for the Aqua recommended slate of candidates for Region 10, or do we want to pick from the candidates that are on there? And thank you. If we can share this screen. It's in your board packet, but if we can bring that up. There it goes. So at the top, this is the Region 10 nominating committee's recommended slate. So they recommend a chair, a vice chair, and specific board members. our board can simply say, yeah, we support that recommended slate of candidates. Alternatively, below where it says or, and if you can, somebody can scroll down a little bit, you can do individual selections. Now, for some of the positions, there's only one candidate. For example, Dana Freehoff is the only one that's up for chair. So whether you vote for their slate of candidates or pick from the list below, the only choice is Dana. But for some of the other positions, there are choices. So it's up to the board whether you want to vote at all, and if you do want to vote, how do you want to vote? But we need an action to be taken so that we can submit our ballot, basically. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Is there a direction the board would like to take?
You need this tonight?
Recommend that we go with their recommendations.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, do you know any of these individuals? I don't know. Do you, Jim?
What?
Do you know any of these individuals?
I know Diane.
Can we vote on the people individually?
Yeah, so this below the or, what you're seeing right now, we could submit a ballot that shows this. It's not worth looking at the chair and the vice chair, there's only one choice. But when you look at the other ones, like the San Diego County candidates for board members, you can pick two choices. And our board can pick two. We'll check the boxes here, and then staff will work with the president and submit this to Aqua, reflecting the Vallecitos Water District vote, which would be different than possibly from the slate of candidates put forth by their nominating committee.
So can we scroll down to see the recommended? Do you have any input yourself?
I don't. I know some of the individuals, a lot I don't, because they're from areas that are outside of our service area,
Yeah.
our region. So if somebody can, whoever has control, if you can scroll up and take a look at the recommended
So those are
slate.
the recommended.
But we vote with one voice.
One voice,
One
yep.
voice. Then-
Yeah, they only, thank you for the clarifying question. Aqua will only accept one vote from each agency.
And just to clarify, if you want to make multiple motions, one for each office or category, you can do that, or there can be a single motion with all of your proposals for the board to consider.
Well, I personally don't know any of the other folks, so I'm going to stay with recommending their nomination.
Likewise, like Eric and Jim, I don't know either of them either. I'm good with the recommended.
I'm familiar with the two that only choose one, so
Yeah.
it doesn't make much difference. I don't know any of the others individually. I would go with the recommended slate, it's my opinion.
My only concern is that there is someone from FPUD on the slate.
From
and
where?
From Fallbrook Utility. And I know that there are differing opinions about the movement away from San Diego County Water Authority. So if we vote for a slate, we're voting for someone who is in favor, presumably, of costing our customers more money.
I'm told that if they do move away, they're going to have to pony up for the expense. So I'm not sure how that would impact our ratepayers.
Yeah, I'm not sure they'll recover it all.
Yeah, I can address that. So LAFCO did make the final action to allow Fallbrook and Rainbow to vote on whether they want to leave. The recommendation does include what they call an exit fee. It does not capture all the costs that will be passed along to the San Diego County Water Authority remaining member agencies. They capped it at 5 or 7 years of the annual impacts.
5 years.
5 years, was it? Yeah, so there's a cap. So our ratepayers, all the remaining ratepayers' rates will go up when Fallbrook and Rainbow leave the service area.
Director Boyd-Hodgson brings up a valid point.
So if we voted, could we vote for everyone except the Fallbrook, if that's something we wanted to do? Or does it really make a difference? I don't know, but it's going to cost our customers some money.
Nick's at a lot of these functions. Do you have anything to add?
I don't think it really makes a difference.
You can't answer that.
Same relationship.
Oh, I thought I could get him.
He's smart.
He is a smart guy.
Well, do you want to make a motion to do something different than the recommended slate?
I will make a motion to vote for the slate excluding the member from Fallbrook.
And replacing instead?
do we have options? I don't know if we have options.
Yeah, there's two other folks, Manny and Jose.
Does anyone know Manny or Jose?
No, not me.
So just to clarify, Jose is on the slate already. He's the other recommended person from San Diego. So if you were looking to replace it, it would be
with
either
Manny.
Manny
Oh, okay.
or Alexandra.
Yeah.
I move to replace the person with Ally. The Fallbrook utility with Alexandra Barrenter.
I'll second that.
All right, then let's vote. Very good. That takes care of that. And reports, general manager.
Yeah, I've got a few. So although the board took an action tonight that we didn't discuss, it was on consent, I wanted to highlight it for your information. So the item that you had approved was regarding an employee that left. So we have a retirement, somebody from our IT department, they decided to retire. And instead of just replacing that person with a new employee, we're trying a different approach. So our IT supervisor, in coordination with the managers, is proposing to use additional augmented IT outside services to fulfill this role on a trial basis, probably a 6-month basis. If it's successful, we think this move would keep the same high level of standards and save the district about $70,000 per year. So I applaud staff whenever they look at innovative ways to provide high-level services at not just a lower cost, but a lower body count, which has long-term consequences for PERS costs. So we'll monitor it for about 3 to 6 months, and we'll let the board know which direction we choose to go.
Very good,
Is their
very
name
good.
Osiris or something like Optimus?
It's, the name of the company is Ostari.
Ostari.
So they're an IT support firm. We've been using them for probably 4 or 5 years. They do great work. We're just gonna, we're not amending their existing agreement. It'll be a separate agreement, but basically using more of their services through a separate agreement. So kudos to Matthias for proposing that approach. I like it. I like that innovative approach, and do what we can to help our ratepayers keep our
Very
costs
good.
as low as possible. So the other thing I was gonna say, we kind of touched on this. So the board approved 2 large construction projects tonight, $13.5 million combined. Since I've been here, that's the single biggest night of approving capital improvement program projects, right? So kudos to you. They were both really needed projects. But to touch on what was addressed earlier, we knew this was coming. We've been getting criticism, some from the members of the public, about your reserves are too high. And the answer that staff has given you, I personally have given you, is we have a plan. Yes, our reserve levels are high, but we have a large capital improvement program coming, and we want to make sure we have adequate cash so that we can cash fund these projects and not have to go to market for bonds. You all know what's happened with the interest rates lately. We'd be in a much worse position if we had to go out to incur debt to build these projects. That's why you have healthy reserves, and that's what we've done. So not a surprise. Yes, it will draw down our reserve levels, but they'll always be above the floor, and they'll always be healthy, and it's in the best interest of our ratepayers. So I just wanted to highlight that fact. I think the last thing I wanted to say is tomorrow is our employee appreciation lunch, so I hope you can all join us. So 11:30, the event starts in the lunchroom, but the board portion of it starts at 12:30 in the boardroom here, so hopefully we'll get to see all of you. So
There is a conflict with the CSTA meeting tomorrow,
okay.
if I'm reading that correct. I am not personally attending.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that known to anyone who is attending.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that there was
It's
a
not
conflict.
tomorrow?
Thank you.
I think it was rescheduled. I
Okay.
also had it on my calendar
Okay.
as a conflict, but I think it was rescheduled.
Well, then disregard.
That's a dinner meeting. It's not
Dinner.
at the same time.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
It's
Well, that's the
conflict.
quarterly,
Yeah.
that's the quarterly dinner
That's in
down
the
at the
evening.
butcher shop. Okay.
Yeah,
And that's all I have, President Hernandez.
My
very good.
apologies.
Legal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick item for the board. So as the board knows, every 2 years you have to complete your AB 1234 ethics training as a member of the board. We just found out, I don't know how each of you have completed it in the past, but the FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission, historically has provided a free way of doing the ethics training via their website for everyone. But unfortunately, after January 1st, they're going to discontinue that. So AB 1234 ethics training will be available from other sources. It is something that our office provides. There are other private providers. It is something that often conferences will have a session on it. So I just wanted to let you know, in case your compliance period is coming up, you may decide you want to do the FPPC one for free before that goes away as of January 1st, or consider how, if you're planning to do it sometime next year, how you might otherwise go about it. And I'm happy to work with Glenn and Anthony to provide options if you have questions on that.
I think it would be helpful to know when we must do it, and if we do, let's say we will opt for the free version, and our time doesn't elapse until next year, do we still get credit for it?
Yes, it's basically it's every 2 years. If you do it early, then you're just good for the next 2 years. So you could do it at the 1.5 point to get it in, and then you're good for that next 2 year
And
period.
I'll work with Ann and Anthony, we'll get to each of you your expiration date, so you can make
Good,
choices.
thank you
of
very
when
much,
you-
yes. Water Authority.
Okay, the Water Authority Board held a special Board of Directors meeting on August 10th. In the lone open session item, the action was to authorize the General Counsel to execute a contract amendment with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck LLP for special counsel legal services in the amount of $3.2 million for fiscal years 2024 and 2025. This contract with Brownstein is essentially, the majority of it's for support of the MWD program and MWD delegate support, and secondly, for litigation support. There was also, let's see, 4 closed session items that I can't talk about.
So is that a retainer? Is that what that is?
Combination of retainer and hourly charges and expenses.
End of report?
End of report.
Thank you. Encinitas wastewater, we had our capital committee meeting this morning, and the planning of the capital improvement program was presented, which gets updated every 2 years. Meeting this week, and they're going to look at it over the next 5 years. The primary sediment basin, we have 10 of them that have been built from 1960, 70, and 80, and 90. They're doing preliminary designs on that, and it's going to go to bid on the first 2 tanks the first of the year. Next year, we'll do 3 more, and then the year after that, the balance. In the construction project, the digester improvement number 4, it was constructed in 1982, replacing all the electrical from underground to overhead. We're going to replace the heat exchanger, and we're going to add 2 pump mixing equipment that is going to be a big project. A 20-inch diameter pipe is going to be bored into the side of the tank and going to eliminate some of the work on the roof. Let's see, HVAC improvement for phase 2 construction. The contract, the award for that phase was 1982. The up phase now is $1,418,000, and the first phase is construction is $288,000, 30% design, and negotiate the guaranteed max, and then the balance in phase 2 of the $1,418,000. And PFAS. Interesting, the conference also talked about PFAS. Last year at the conference, everybody had their hands up. Whoa, terror, we're all dying. This year, not so much. They've had 3 studies, one from my alma mater, University of Michigan, which always tells you the tale, one from Colorado University, and one from Arizona. And what they did find is, and they're mostly concerned with biosolids, the application of biosolids on land, whether it was leaching in the ground and then going into the groundwater. They found that not to be the case. And again, I think we talked about this, we're talking 1 part per trillion. It's a drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So personally, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And that's my report. Standing committees. Any
The P3 committee met on August the 7th, and the topic of discussion was the director's handbook that Ann and Anthony put a lot of effort into putting together a table of contents, trying to decide what should go in. and it's really looking good. So thank you for that work. I think it'll be really, really helpful to new directors. I appreciate your work on that. That was what we spent most of the time talking about. And I want to bring to the attention of my colleagues that we also discovered that some of us have access to the building using a key fob, and some of us do not. So I would very much like for also something to go into the director's handbook, maybe standardizing if we all should have key fobs or if we all should not have key fobs, so that we can physically access the building if we need to.
So I have an update on that.
Great,
Good.
great.
Whoever comes tomorrow will probably give you a key fob. So
Great.
there's your
Is that what this thing
incentive.
is?
Oh, so we're gonna keep our fobs, and we're gonna keep
Yes.
fobs for the new board members.
And
So just so I'm clear, you have one, you have one.
Yeah.
You have one. Do you have one?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I have a problem with that, right? So at some point, there was a decision made to offer everyone on the committee one of these, but that decision was not made for me. So can someone explain that to me, like I'm
Yeah.
5?
I can look, excuse me, I can look into it. I don't know the process with HR when they onboard you. I'm not in the room, so I don't know the decisions that were made. There's certainly no intent to exclude you. I don't know
Well,
how.
I would hope not.
Yeah, so I know sometimes directors just reach out and say, hey, can I have a fob? In which we'll provide a fob. It's not like there's a secret ceremony where we hand out fobs when people come on board.
Well, that would be fun. We
Yeah,
could do that
and
for
with a
the new
handshake and-
directors,
and
but
everything.
clearly I missed
Yeah.
it, or I didn't know I could,
Yeah, so you will get
or
one.
I was overlooked, which
No.
is problematic.
Yeah, you weren't overlooked.
We weren't gonna overlook you.
Yeah, so in addition to the fob, each of you can have a push-button access the last 4 digits of your driver's license number, not your social security. And whenever there's a keypad, put in the last 4 digits of your driver's license number and hit the pound sign, and that will activate the elevator,
Yes.
and I believe the doorway going up the stairs, so you can get to the conference room
And
upstairs.
did we get IT to resolve that? Because we tried it on mine and it didn't work.
Yes, IT said they're working on it. I think it's done now, but I'll double check with them after this meeting
Okay,
and see where
because
they're at. Is
I'm
IT
halfway
not
here
doing
and
it?
I realized, oh, damn, left my fob in my glove box.
I think it'll also work on the gates outside, so if you need to get inside the gates.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
it's not unrestricted access. We do limit the director's access to certain access points. It's not the same access that staff members have, but it'll get you to the public areas here. It'll get you in the facility, get you upstairs. And I apologize, Director Boyd Hodgson, for you being excluded from this.
Thank you.
this
I
club.
look forward, now that I am entering my potentially last year on the board, having access, like
Yes.
my colleagues, to the rest of the building. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right. Director's report, meetings and conferences.
I attended CASA as well, and there was a lot of talk about PFAS. And one of the other interesting results of one of those studies was that apparently plants are not uptaking PFAS if PFAS is in biosolids. And that's great news.
Yes.
That is really, really great news, because that means you can use biosolids to fertilize crops and they will grow more. But the plants, because they're wonderful, filter it right out.
They know what to do.
That stood out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I attended CASA as well, and I found the expert panel on biosolids to be very interesting, as has been mentioned. There's something that I find a little bit strange is that, according to some of the experts, or according to what's known so far, is that there really haven't been any health effects identified yet, specifically for the forever chemicals, PFAS and PFOA and all the others. Yet, one of the main manufacturers, 3M, has already put up, I think, $13 billion to satisfy claims. And the EPA has set a limit that's essentially 0. So somebody knows something that they're not telling us yet about potential health effects. I find it interesting 3M has rushed to the table to put up that much money when there's been no health effects identified yet.
Yeah.
So.
I attended it well and ditto everything that's been said. Anything else? Anybody else? Any other comments? Seeing none?
One
Up,
more.
up, up.
So sorry.
Item 5.1,
What?
so, yeah. There's-
Oh, I'm sorry, there's another page. The Aquafall Conference for meetings is November 28th in Indian Wells. Please let Anthony and Ann know if you're interested. And comments, further comments?
Yep.
Yes.
Would propose adding to the agenda for the next meeting, the consideration of the board of sponsoring the Boys and Girls Annual Event.
Oh, very good. I will second that motion. Do we need to vote on that, sir?
No, I'll add it to the agenda. Just for history, the ordinance 221, the business of the board, lists the organizations that are automatically approved, and the Boys and Girls Club event is not on there, so it does require an action by the board. So with this request, I'll put it on there for the board's consideration.
Very good. Thank you very
And
much.
there'll be a couple things. It'll be, do you want to buy a table? And then the associated questions are the board members eligible for a per diem for attending and expenses, mileage, or is it just sponsoring the event? So
Very
be
good.
thinking about that for the next meeting.
All right. Now, anything further? Very good. We are adjourned.